Today my guests are Mike and Toni Feltman. Guys, how you doing?
Very good.
Good. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I appreciate you on my show. I don't know if you know this about me, but my first language that I ever got paid to program in was FoxPro 2.5. And you guys are legends in the FoxPro community. You've been in FoxPro since the beginning?
More or less. I started at Fox Software. I was only there about a year and a half, but I was there in '89.
Fox Software's the people that invented
Right.
FoxPro and
Fox
managed it until Microsoft bought it.
Yes, yeah. Fox Software started with Fox Base and then Fox Base Plus, and I came in right when Fox Pro was getting pretty close to going to its first alpha. So I came in, worked on Fox Base, worked on Fox Base Mac a lot, which the little bit of Mac background I got at that time frame still really prepared me well for a lot of things coming down the road in my career, I guess. So then I left in 1990, and originally we started out as Neon Software, and after a few nasty letters from another Neon Software, some legal threats, we decided to change our name, and so now we're F1, and so we've been in business, like June will be 22 years. So
Wow.
It's interesting that you say 2.5 because that was like everything. That's when they gave us the screen painter and the report designer and all that stuff.
I came in at a good time. I didn't
Yeah,
have to do all these,
the 1.0 was the first windowing environment, but you still had to hard code everything that you want to see on the screen. So.
Yeah, and then shortly after 2.6 had the Windows version.
Yeah, that was.
And that's really where I took off. A few months after I started, they released the Windows version, and we were porting to Windows for workgroups.
Okay.
And getting all of our applications migrated over to that. It was a pretty exciting time. I mean, FoxPro had a lot to offer that other computing products didn't have. This was, 1993, I think, something like that.
That sounds about right.
And I mean, there are products like Oracle and SQL Server that existed, but they're very expensive. And there are products like Paradox and Access that existed also that were just didn't have the advantage of FoxPro.
I think 93 through 97 or so-ish was really probably more the heyday for FoxPro even compared to when Visual FoxPro came out. The 2.6 version, when at that point in time cross-platform was a lot more relevant to be able to say we're going to run a network app on our Macs and our PCs with the same source code base and Fox. And Unix, yeah. And Fox was, Microsoft didn't put 2.6 out on Unix. The Fox base products were on Unix. But Microsoft never had a Unix.
I thought there was
release,
really short-lived.
There may have been.
Could
We
be
never
different.
I'm not sure.
We never got into that.
I did have the cross-platform issues where you try to build the same app and make it run under
Yeah.
DOS and Windows.
You have to do the transporter.
There was
all the
transporter,
time.
or there was some tricks to delete some of the rows in those tables.
Yeah.
Because FoxPro was built on top of FoxPro.
Yeah,
Right.
it is.
Everything was a FoxPro
Right.
table, even though the screens were FoxPro tables.
Yeah.
That's
what made
still
it
the case
fast.
today.
It made it fast.
Yeah, I haven't touched it in a long time. I think the last version I worked on was version 7 had just come out. So I was there. I worked on it for about 5 years with a company called IS Research that you guys know about. It's long gone. And my previous company where it was just in-house products.
Yeah, the current version is 9 now, and I think it came out, it's been a while. I think it came out in 2006. So that was the last, there was a service pack for it, maybe 2008-ish or so.
Okay.
There was a hot fix last year.
Yeah, there's some people in the community that have been very persuasive with Microsoft about being able to get bugs fixed and things like that. And there's some people at Microsoft who go all the way back to Fox Software and still it's their baby and they still care about it. And if they can do a little thing here or there for it, that's allowed. They will. But I think support ends officially in 2015.
Okay.
I don't know if you can still. I know in the 2011 Visual Studio, enterprise subscriptions, it still came with FoxPro 9. I don't know if now that it's more or less officially retired and legacy, I don't know if it's still going to be in the MSDN, universal subscription
I'm not
or
sure.
not.
I haven't downloaded for a long time. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either.
It's kind of funny because FoxPro, even back when I worked with them, there were always rumors that next version is the last version.
Yeah.
And it kept surviving because people were so passionate about it.
We've dealt with that, you know. I mean, we, as much as sometimes we try to get away from it, it's what people come to us for, and it's still really capable, and there's still a lot of people with giant legacy applications in FoxPro that aren't in a position to or aren't ready to, or for whatever reason, to bite the bullet and go for a rewrite. So, but they still need new features or enhancements or whatever. And occasionally, people are still doing new apps, especially in-house apps where they just want to solve a business problem and they could care less what the technology is as long as the technology solves that business problem.
Right.
And the product, unless the operating system changes, the FoxPro product will always be a viable solution until the operating system won't support what architecture it's on, because it has a data engine that is, blazingly fast. It has a really flexible programming language. It doesn't have the things that I miss when I do have to do FoxPro work are the tools that are available in the IDEs of the more modern languages. It doesn't have that, but to get something done and be really flexible and have it hit data very quickly, there's really not other products out there that can do all of that in one
For a
inexpensive
database
bundle.
application, it was ideal. Especially a bunch of third-party products came out to sort of accelerate that development. So you guys have one, right?
Right.
Yeah, we have the Visual Fox Express framework.
And that's still a product.
It's still a product.
It is actually. Our tradition over the years has been to always release new versions on Friday the 13th. It just sort of happened accidentally enough times that we started planning around it, and we actually haven't had a real release in a long time. And Toni has been doing, most of our development has not been in our product as of late. We've gone in and worked on people's legacy apps or been doing .NET work, and Toni's actually the last 6-8 months or so been doing some development in our product, and as a result got the opportunity to add a few little features here and there to the framework.
So you have a little bit of
So
stuff else.
yeah, so we're gonna have a release
Will we get home
today
tonight?
actually, because today is
Today's
Friday the 13th.
I didn't realize that. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh,
so
everything goes
we will
okay.
have
So your show is probably gonna get millions of hits once it leaks that we announced our Fox Express
World premiere,
release.
Yeah.
on it. And now it's public, so Tony's really obligated to finish it.
It's already. So I just have to upload it.
So one of the things I remember dealing with FoxPro is that in a lot of ways it was ahead of its time. So I do mostly .NET development right now, C#, and now we're getting Link. You're actually able to write queries directly in the language,
Right.
which I could do
Years
15 years ago.
Yeah.
Or here's the big one was I learned object-oriented programming from .NET,
Right.
and that eased my transition from FoxPro. It eased my transition into .NET.
Yeah,
Everybody else, the
absolutely.
VB programmers.
It's
Struggle
kind
with
of
that.
funny, really, because when Microsoft was first conceiving .NET, they went and they brought in a whole bunch of people from the FoxPro community, and essentially they wanted to know, what did we get right, what did we get wrong as far as OOP and all this kind of stuff goes. They had us write a bunch of white papers, and some things they listened on, some things they didn't. We really thought visual inheritance was a lot more important from the get-go than Microsoft did. And I think that really turned out to be true, because there were a lot, especially with containers and things like that. In the early versions of .NET, it was very difficult to subclass some of those things. But they laid out, it was what the most impressive thing to me about it was they laid out a roadmap for .NET that was a pretty long future for a development product, not necessarily knowing what was going to take place in the marketplace around it and all that kind of thing. And this is 1999, 2000 or so. Yeah,
Patented over 10 years.
And they said that around 2008 is when we really expect, from a developer productivity standpoint, for .NET to rival Visual FoxPro. And I was like, okay, so probably don't need to be in a real big hurry to switch. And I really think that in terms of the IntelliSense and things like that, that turned out to be true. When even a good FoxPro developer, when Visual Studio 2008 came out, you could sit down, start working in it, and it didn't take long at all to feel comfortable. I mean, that was when the product really just gave you a lot of help with great IntelliSense and the feature-wise, except for really the native database engine, I think, and maybe reporting. I think in every other way they had caught up and surpassed what was in FoxPro.
It's interesting you mentioned the object orientation because I used VB, I think it was still VB6 at the time.
We hated those VB6 guys.
I know. Well, no, this was when, but this was when FoxPro was in beta.
Okay.
I used VB6 to become comfortable with properties, events, methods, that type of architecture, finding tutorials and stuff, things that I could just get comfortable, and then put FoxPro to use doing the same kind of thing. And then, the OOP part of it came in, and we said, oh yeah, those VB6 programmers were really just object-based programmers.
Right.
We're object-oriented programmers.
This
and
is
it's
supportive inheritance.
exactly,
Right.
and it has significantly helped me in my .NET work. My first big project, I had Jamie Wright come in and code review for me, and he was like, wow, I really didn't expect that a FoxPro programmer would get how to put these pieces together. So that that made me feel good, but it really has helped people coming into the .NET community.
Yeah, I echo the exact same thing. Because .NET was hard. It was hard on a big paradigm. It looks like here's the problem with .NET. I remember back to about 2000 when it came out, and they were trying to attract VB6 developers.
Right.
There was a lot of drag and drop stuff in there. And they had the web development was all. They had all kinds of layers of abstraction on top of it to make it look like VB6. VB6 guys were struggling with it.
Oh yeah.
Struggling with it big time. A lot of it had to do with inheritance. And we had that step up on those guys.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff you see today, even from people that haven't taken the time to really gain an understanding of it, they're writing .NET apps, VB6 style. So we see that in Fox too.
.NET in a lot of ways to me was more like our Visual FoxPro product, which was an application framework. And I think most people working in .NET tend to use it more that way. They subclass, they use the direct instances of the framework classes. They don't create their own class hierarchies and that kind of as much as what you
I think there's a trend in the industry to simplify that inheritance hierarchy.
Yeah.
If you get a hierarchy that's 8 layers deep, then maybe it's too
Right.
complicated.
And
And it
the
gets too
framework's
bulky.
so big in and of itself already that, where do you add those layers, or do you add those layers?
You still have to
Always a
understand
valid
it. You still have to
question.
understand it. I actually remember going to that. I think it was FoxPro 3 where they
Yeah.
And I remember that was when I had my big struggle.
Yeah.
Going to that product. And I went out to a class that Alan Driver went on
Okay.
to try to learn his framework.
Yeah.
I read his book.
Oh,
I sort of
yeah.
got it.
Well, 3 was so buggy in and of itself, even if you were doing it right.
So I didn't know what was my mistakes, what was
Yeah.
the framework's mistakes.
Yeah, it was hard.
It was a hard time for me. It really was.
And inheritance was our hammer at that point in time. I mean, you used it for everything, right or wrong. No, that was before anybody got design patterns or anything else. It was just
Yeah.
like, oh, I'll just make another subclass. Yeah, I got 9 now. But
It's interesting, back when we were talking with Microsoft in the early days about .NET, the whole strongly typed thing is, we don't have that in Fox,
Okay.
A variable is a variable, and whatever you set it to the last is what it is.
That's not still true, is it?
Mhm.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. So
You
it
can
was a
you can-
dynamic language.
Yes.
Which, by the way, is cool again.
Right, exactly.
Exactly.
Well, and they fought us. They're like, no, you write bad code when you have a dynamically typed language, and blah, blah, blah. And we're like, but you can do so much more. And it kind of stifled us from moving our framework into .NET because we had like an object that represented a field in a table, and it had to have behaviors regardless of its data type. And you couldn't do that without like all kinds of little hooks and behavior
Right.
objects.
yeah, we had
And
one
now
thing
we
to
see
follow.
it's cool again, and they get that dynamics are good, but I do agree that the strongly typed parts for finding, my first .NET app, I never had to run it I wrote like just almost the entire app without running it once because I could catch most of my errors in the compiler. So,
.NET's really turned out to be, of all the things that FoxPro was supposed to die in favor of, .NET's the only one that's actually turned out to have the staying power. I mean, at one point in time, we were supposed to drop it and go to Power Builder. One point in time, we were supposed to drop it and go to Delphi. And
Yeah, they cannibalized a lot of it to put into Access.
Yeah.
But Access never got to for a developer.
Yeah.
It never really got to the level of FoxPro.
Even for end users, because it was all packaged together and difficult to interface, it just didn't, unless you were a secretary, it wasn't going to get you anywhere.
Right. So how much of your business now is doing FoxPro?
It's it varies a lot, but right now, probably about 70% of my work is still basically ripping pieces out of a huge legacy system and making them separate apps, because we're replacing most of the legacy system with SAP. And once we go live with SAP, then the next phase actually is to rewrite all those little legacy apps in .NET and officially retire them from FoxPro for my primary client on that. So then that's going to be several years. Some of the apps are pretty significant, even pulled out as standalone things from the main system. And then the other.
And for me, it's I'd say almost 100% of my job still. I do do a lot of database work as well outside of the FoxPro data. My clients are using Oracle SQL Server, and I think we have one that's going to switch to Advantage Database Server here in the next couple of weeks. So I have started moving some of my code into the database engine, but other than that, the client-side stuff is still.
So that's interesting. So after years of threatening to become a legacy application, FoxPro now really is legacy.
It is.
There isn't going to be another release for it, so, but it still has a few more years left of active work on this project.
Yeah.
Well,
It's amazing. I mean, we have a lot of times more leads than we know what to do with, and it's hard to find FoxPro developers because a lot of them are older, maybe even already retired or whatever, and a lot of them
dying of old age.
Yes, dying of old age. A lot of them, and they moved on, and for a younger kid starting out in IT, it's not, it's not a wise thing to invest in,
Well, I was in a session here at Code Mash with Julie Lehrman, and she is maintaining a FoxPro 2.5 DOS, I think, application.
Wow, yeah.
And she said she can't justify to her client to rewrite it because it would cost way too much money, and what they use it for, it works just fine, but they just need little nips and tucks and stuff. So, and 2.6 was 1993.
3 or 4, yeah.
And it's still alive and people are using it. So I tend to see that FoxPro is probably still going to be out there and active for more than a few years, but maybe not for new apps, but just for the stuff that clients are.
Have you heard anything about the language itself? Does Microsoft have any plans to move it to open source, or?
There's a lot of
the product itself is written in the product, and all the pieces of it that were written in FoxPro have been released to open source, and they're on Codeplex. There's a VFPX site.
Are those evolving then? Are people contributing to
There's several projects up there that are still pretty active, and it's actually, it's some of the work that people are doing in FoxPro is really pretty amazing, because there's people really going to great lengths to let you write an application in FoxPro that in every way looks and feels like a modern .NET application. And so there's people doing, tab strip controls and all the kinds of things that you have in .NET. There's people that
ribbons.
Ribbons, yeah. There's people that have figured out how to take and make ActiveX controls in .NET and make them friendly to FoxPro so they can use them in FoxPro. So and I can never decide if it's if it's a good thing for them to be doing or not. I mean, if you have we have customers with huge legacy apps that have to put new releases out. FoxPro was a really popular product for vertical market products, and they have to put new releases out. They've got code bases that go back to the 90s, and they're just not in a position to say, hey, we're freezing it and rewriting from scratch. So they do everything within their power to keep their applications looking modern and fresh. I think the real test is going to be if an operating system version comes out that Fox won't run on, which I really don't anticipate for a long time. But it's always going to be 32-bit. It's never going to evolve into the 64-bit world, and I can see that becoming more and more of an issue going forward.
The activity on Codeplex too is indicative of FoxPro's nature, as it's always been, it's a community product. Even when the community was huge, it was all about sharing and giving ideas, and Microsoft really researched what went on in the FoxPro community in order to nurture the same type of thing in the .NET environment, and the .NET environment's really getting there now, but it took a while. It was all very self-contained for quite a few years, and that just continues with this drive to extend the product in whatever ways the community can extend it to fit what their apps need.
The FoxPro is probably the most passionate community I've ever been around that revolve around a single product.
Yeah.
They really, to the point that they hated other products.
Yes.
They put a picture of VP6 up at foxpro.com on the slide deck.
Yeah.
The entire audience would get up and boo.
Yeah.
Or access.
Absolutely.
Get that guy out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. There's about 20-ish people here at Codenash with FoxPro roots, and
That we know of.
that we know of, and I'm sure there's some others here. And we're all friends. We all have, we go back with a lot of them nearly 20 years, and it's a lot of fun to get together, see everybody again, and all that. And you don't see the large tight knit groups like that we have here in some places you do, but
I think over time we'll see
yeah,
that.
I
The
think
longevity
it's
is just not there.
a function of time more than anything else, and it's a function of how long FoxPro stood
I
as a
think it's a
viable
function
product.
also that sort of circle the wagons mentality.
Well, there certainly could be some of
Yeah.
that. There certainly could be some of that, but I think of the people here, her and I are the ones still working in Fox the most. Most of the other ones have pretty much completely moved on to something else, or they don't talk about it.
Yeah.